I wrote it myself. That is the part I would change, if changing were on offer. Not the tripod. Not the cylinder that came away in your hands, so a second could be dropped in its place. I would change one clause, and the clause was mine, because I was a lawyer before I was anything else, and I did not hire a man to draft for me. Patent number 418. The year 1718. In the reign of Queen Anne, the Crown's law officers had lately required that a patentee must describe his invention in writing and say plainly how it was to be performed, and mine was among the first that did. I was proud of that. I am still a little. It is a clear document. Every part of it is clear, including the part where I explained that the gun would be furnished with two kinds of shot: round bullets, for use against Christians, and square bullets, for the Turks, which, I wrote, would convince them of the benefits of Christian civilization. I have had 300 years to consider that sentence, and I have not found the bottom of it. 4 of the guns are still in the world. I know where each of them is. Not one of them is where I meant it to be, and not one of them is understood as the thing I made. Let me take you to them. Understand first what I thought I was selling. A single barrel, 3 feet long, a bore of 1.25 inches. Behind it, a cylinder holding 6 charges, or 7, or 9, depending which drawing you consult. My own patent shows all 3. You loaded the cylinder off the gun, powder and ball, and when it was spent, you unscrewed the crank and lifted the whole of it away and set a fresh one in. A charger, the papers called it. It was a ship's gun. That was the whole of my intention. It was to stand on the deck and stop men coming over the rail. I called it the defense gun, and I meant defense, and I have to tell you that at a public trial in 1722, it fired 63 shots in 7 minutes in driving rain, which was more than any musketeer of the day would manage in the dry. None of which is what anybody reads. What anybody reads is the clause about the square shot. I had written before 5 books on wool and the wool manufacture and where the interest of England truly lay. On the royal fishery, dialogues, a burgomaster and an English gentleman, an Englishman and a Dutchman, because I liked the form and thought a reader learned better when he could hear 2 men disagree. And in 1713, 5 years before the patent, I published a book called The Club, or A Gray Cap for a Green Head, a dialogue between a father and a son. The father tells the son how to live. They reprinted that one as late as 1900. A man who spent a book teaching a boy how to conduct himself, and then wrote down which shape of metal to put into which sort of person. The first of them stands in Northamptonshire. The Board of Ordnance saw a prototype in 1717 and were not impressed. And I want to be accurate about this. They were right. The flintlock ignition was clumsy and it was not dependable. And a gun that must be screwed tight between every shot is a gun that will fail on a wet deck at the moment it is wanted. They saw it and they declined it, and they were correct. But John Montague, the second Duke, took an interest. He would be Master General of the Ordnance himself one day, though not for 20 years yet. He bought at least 2. One of them has never really left his family. It sits at Boughton House, which was his, and it has sat in that country for 300 years, while the world it was designed for came apart and was replaced twice over. I said it was a ship's gun. It has spent 3 centuries inland, in Northamptonshire, about as far from salt water as this island permits. There is a note in Blackmore's list of British military firearms. Puckle's brass gun in the Tower of London, illustration 77. That was this family's gun, lent out for a while, and catalogued as though it belonged to the tower. Even the guns that stayed home got their labels wrong. The second is at Beaulieu, in Hampshire, which was also Montague's. These 2 nearly went somewhere. In 1722, the Duke fitted out an expedition to take St. Lucia and St. Vincent, and the manifest of what sailed from Portsmouth lists, in the clerk's own spelling, 2 machine guns of Puckles. That manifest is the first time in the English language, so far as anyone has found, that the words machine gun are written down. It is not a description of what my gun did. It is a shipping clerk needing 2 words for a thing he had no word for. The expedition failed. The French were already established and the whole business collapsed, and there is no evidence, none, that the guns were used in any action. They went out to the Caribbean and they came back and they were put away. I want to say this once, plainly, because everything else in this account is a story about labels and cases and cataloging errors, and this is not. The Puckle gun was never used in any combat operation or war, not once. In 300 years, the square bullets I specified in my patent were never, so far as any record shows, fired at any human being at all. The cruelty in that document was entirely theoretical. I want that to be a comfort, and it is not one, because I did not know it would be theoretical when I wrote it. I wrote it hoping to sell. The third went east while I was still alive. A brass one was bought, it appears, for the Tsar. Peter, the one they call the Great, and delivered into Russia in 1718, the same year as the patent. It is in the Artillery Museum in St. Petersburg now, among the rapid-firing pieces of the first half of the century, cared for and studied and written up in the Russian journals. Consider what that means about the clause. I had written that the square shot was for the Turks. Peter had fought the Ottomans and would again. Of every buyer in Europe, he was the one-man positioned to use my gun exactly as the patent proposed. He did not. He bought it, and it went into a collection, and it stayed there. The most enthusiastic customer I ever found treated the thing as a curiosity from the moment it arrived. He wanted the mechanism. Nobody wanted the argument. I had put the argument in writing because I believed it would help me sell the mechanism. And the mechanism sold. Twice, perhaps. And the argument sold to nobody. And outlived everything. The last one is in Beijing. 3 were presented to the emperor in 1804, 80 years after I was buried. The court recorded them. They gave them a name, Lunzipao, wheel gun, which is a better name than mine and describes the thing more exactly than defense gun ever did. And then the court's own record, kept by the Palace Museum to this day, says that the curators did not know where the gun had come from. They looked at the flintlock and took it for a sight. They wrote down that it was fired with a lit match, a gun so thoroughly forgotten that the finest catalogers in the Qing Empire, holding it in their hands, could not tell how it was made to go off. That is the end of the trail. Boughton, Beaulieu, St. Petersburg, Beijing. 4 objects, none of them at sea, none of them used, one of them written up wrong by people who were being careful. There is one more thing, and it is not a gun. In 1720, in the year the bubble swallowed London, a company was floated on my invention and it went bust, and the men who had put money in lost it. A print shop sold a satirical playing card. It shows the gun, a good likeness, better than it deserved, cutting down not Turks but Englishmen in tricorn hats. My subscribers. And underneath, 4 lines. A rare invention to destroy the crowd. Of fools at home instead of fools abroad. Fear not, my friends, this terrible machine. They're only wounded who have shares therein. They got there before I did. 1720, some anonymous rhymer in a print shop worked out in 4 lines what took me 300 years. That I had written abroad into a legal document as though it were a place where different rules applied, and that the only people my gun ever actually harmed were the ones standing closest to me. The square bullets were never fired. The clause was never used. It only ever did one thing, and it is still doing it. It is the only part of me anyone remembers.